collaboration. So anyway, the short story of this document is we get a lot of great feedback, but not a lot of concrete contributions. So I'm not sure what to say about committing to deadlines and things like that.
If we're looking for a real world example, maybe we can just do like an interview with someone who has an example. So it's a easier lift. We can just have like a conversation with so-and-so. Tell me about your experience and how this worked in, real life.
I wonder if we could get like Dom or Dan Torgo, someone like that to maybe also, like, we could review it with them and see if they have some examples or some of those things that like really jump out as cases in point.
If you want me, do you want me to reach out to Dan? Do you?
Yeah, that'd be great. I have about like 15 different things I'm talking with him about at any given time. So maybe good to have someone else on that ask. So either of them I think would be super helpful to fill in maybe.
I'll also try to brainstorm if I can think of if I can remember any example, or like I could look at the CSS repo for like CSS bugs that were sort of recently reported that might be easier to construct an example around.
Well, JSON schema is something that has come up in this particular the OpenJS standards community of, they went through the thought process of whether to go to a standards body or just publish a spec. But it's not exactly, it's not clear how that has, what the end of that story is. So, yeah, it'd be nice to have a more mainstream example that has really kind of gone through the whole life cycle. But
what about like maybe like Marcos could, because I mean Marcos and Mike Taylor, they ran oh gosh, what was that site? Oh, they had a I'll think of it. Sorry. I feel like those two would be ones good people to ask to for like a complete, to your point, Mike, that's like a completed kind of bug, because there for a while they did a lot of mentorship on this topic.
I got to agree with whoever said that CSS would probably be a good source of examples, because that is, that's kind of more problem driven. Real developers have a problem, and people come up with various solutions, and they eventually get, implemented and prototyped and ultimately standardized. So, but I don't know the CSS world well enough to pick an example, but that might be a good, source of something that's, important enough to be interesting, but, small enough to be, describable.
Yeah, I think we're having two different types of examples discussed here. One example is the JSON schema one, for example, where you come up with an entirely new feature, you have a proposal, then you wonder how to turn it into a spec, and there's that process. And that's very useful. And I think that the interview format that Robin proposed would work very well there. And the other one, what I actually had in mind when I mentioned having a full example, was more like a smaller thing. Like, you notice that something doesn't work the same way across two browsers. You dig in to see, is this a browser bug, or what does the spec say? You realize the spec doesn't actually say anything about it, so you realize it's a bug on the spec. You file an issue with the CSS working group repo. What should we do in that case? It's not defined anywhere. It gets discussed, stuff gets added to the spec, end of example. Like, I thought that kind of something small and self-contained and relatable like that might work. But I think actually both kinds would be helpful.
I agree. So maybe somebody who knows CSS better than I do come up with such an example, and maybe we interview one of the people that's been driving JSON schema.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
I'll try to brainstorm something about the CSS example, but not
great.
this week.
Yeah.
So action, Leah to brainstorm CSS example, action, interview, I guess
Ben Hutton. Yeah, do you want to do that, Jory?
Yeah,
We
I'll do that.
And then we can, what we do when we do these interviews, whether they're customer stories, we just timestamp them and do a little summary blog. So, and then we can put it on our standard sites, standard pages when we get those updated.
Cool. Great. Look at the time. All right, cool. So next, anything else on concise guide for right now, other than we're all gonna keep working at it for another 2 weeks. All right, then next item on our agenda, define terms for SME participation. This might be slightly old. Let me go see which one this one is. 173. Oh, I opened this one. Go me. Clarify term renewal. Okay, yes. All right, cool. So we are ending, we're about to hit sort of the end of the year for 2022, which is wild to me. Can you guys believe that? And we have had several folks representing OpenJS in a more kind of formal capacity to some of the standards orgs like TC39, W3C, the Unicode Consortium, OSI. So we haven't really been super strict or super formal on defining what that term period is, and kind of how we just take a minute and go review those people, make sure they're still interested in doing that for us, that and all that. We did kind of just do that for Leah. So we've got Leah's nomination open for the tag vote for Leah, and so that one's kind of done, but I think it's worth actually putting this maybe on our public calendar, on our standards calendar, as a moment in time where we just we review that, we check in with our TC39, our OSI, our Unicode reps, and see if they're still wanting to proceed with those roles, if there's a change that needs or wants to be made. So that is the that's the issue.
Yeah, we had one other piece of the issue on the use of the community fund for the SMEs. We agreed in our last meeting that we would make it a year. So, so you wouldn't have to go through a PR every time you travel, but there would be an estimate for the year.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we discussed last time for the community fund? Because initially, your approval is per request when it's like a maintainer going to an event or speaking or things like that. But, you know, we've already said, Leah, we support you for the year. So it should be a little more agile, is what my interpretation of that was 2 weeks ago.
That's my recollection too.
Mm-hmm. Just need to document it.
How does that work for terms that are longer than a year? Like, for example, the tag, if I get elected, it's a 2-year term.
So our budget cycle is just a year. So,
Yeah.
you know, we obviously, if we're supporting you and making a commitment to to support you as the rep, we do so with the full knowledge that that's a 2-year term and not just a 1-year term. The board, it's at the board's discretion to say we fund travel for X many dollars on the year. There's no, I think, indication as far as anybody I think would say that the board intends to stop doing that, but we have to be clear that those approvals come from the board and the board approves on a yearly basis.
Fair enough.
And if you have a massive loss of membership or something like that, you just can't, commit for another year.
Yeah.
So it kind of gets to the financial support for this SMEs and for the that bit. And I guess the other question is, do we want to put this as a moment? I think it'd be really hard to do or maybe it's not that hard to track, okay, well, the membership term year for ECMA starts in June, so we should do that analysis by April of that kind of thing. I think it might make more sense for us to, as a group, look at the plan on an annual basis for everyone and just check in and keep it simple that way. What do y'all think?
That makes sense.
So maybe review reps in December for the upcoming year. And then yeah. Okay. Joe looks deep in thought. All right, okay. All right, so this just we need to document this up.
Joe's deep in thought because tracking terms has been confusing for the CPC, right? So it's one thing we're trying to streamline so we don't have to dig into the depths of our repos or our brains to remember.
We have a document. It's not that hard. Sorry.
It's never in front of our face when we meet, I guess. So
Yeah, we can talk about that some other time.
All right, that gets us through our 3 issues that were tagged for today. Tagged with the standards agenda. I'm just like popping back into the issues list.
Can I ask a question about one of the earlier issues?
Sure.
The calendar itself. It seems as though the only way to find it right now is in that issue, which will probably be eventually closed and then, ferreted away. Should we add it to the OpenJS collaboration page? Should there be a shortcut URL, any of those kinds of things?
100%. I didn't even think about that. That is a really good point. Let's add link to the README on this GitHub.
we could add it to our website where we have our public calendar. We can add another paragraph with the standards calendar.
Yeah, there's even a standard section on the collaboration page.
Yeah, just like the CPC.
Yeah. For folks that don't know too, if you go to OpenJSF, if you go to calendar.openjsf.org, it redirects you to the Google Calendar, which is very convenient. The node one is nodejs.org/calendar. One's a subdomain and the other one's not. But those are really handy.
Okay, I just added those as actions under that issue. Very good catch, Joe. Yeah. All right, so there was another issue that was opened between now and the last meeting that wasn't tagged, but Michael Champion opened this. possible W3C advisory board nomination. So as you all know, we did an election for the new W3C board, and OpenJS cast its ballot whenever that was. They've decided that those folks who had been AB members who were then elected to the board of directors should step down from their AB duties. And so there's going to be a special election to fill the spots of the advisory board. So call for nominations is going to open on the 2nd of December and will end on the 14th. Yeah, I think this is sort of maybe twofold, Mike Champion, if I'm not mistaken. We kind of want to know if there's folks from our community that we'd like to nominate. And then secondly, keeping track of whom is nominated. I just see Tantec is so far the only person. Maybe it might be useful too to kind of talk about how we think that group is shifting now that there's a board of directors to kind of take over management capabilities that the AB had kind of previously taken on. I don't know if you, Leah, I'm curious what you.
Were you asking me, Jory, or?
I think it's just more of a opening the floor for conversation on this particular topic, which is not on the agenda, but probably should have been tagged.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting opportunity with 4 vacancies, and since the incumbents usually run and get reelected, so there's seldom, this many vacancies. And there's only one candidate last I checked, maybe as of yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we did have somebody who's really going to say, well, so let me back up a bit. For the last few years, the AB has been very focused on spinning off W3C as a legal entity. And that's now done. That's the board's responsibility going forward. So the AB should be getting back to its color in the community, and so there's a lot of there to the way the world works now as opposed to how it worked in 1995 when W3C got going. Especially with regard to the role of open source in standards development and implementation. So, it could be a real opportunity for us to put somebody forward who's got some vision there. People like Jory, who would be my preferred candidate, have a lot going on in life and probably don't want that additional hassle. Brian has kind of said no. I've said I'd do it for just to have some knowledge to keep some continuity, but I'm retired and this isn't exactly my passion anymore. So but I really hope we could find somebody in our community to represent us or represent this point of view. So I don't know what to say.
Regrettably, all I have to drop, I'll pop the notes doc into the chat so you can continue this conversation. But I'm gonna have to. Thanks all. Bye.
So you're saying we should probably start trying to actively recruit folks, or maybe we should bring it up in the CPC meeting as well? Or in our standard Slack, flag it.
Yeah, well, we brought it up in the Slack. I don't think, well, I guess we brought it up in GitHub. Yeah. So
Mhm. What's the December 2nd? Is that the deadline for nomination? Is that what you said? Or we said?
November 30th, 6 in my mind, but December 14th is the tag election deadline. I
Got
believe.
it. Okay. Right.
So we've got one or more of these calls before the deadline.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll do another ping. Bring it up in CPC, see if there's anyone who's potentially interested, if none of you are interested. No.
I just don't know if I have the time.
Mhm.
Is this, which position is this for again? I'm looking at
Advisory
Maybe-
board.
the nomination. I'm looking at the issue. It says we have until November 30th to decide.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. We do have our next meeting is, yeah, the 29th. Okay. Well, stay tuned. We'll keep working on it. Is there anything else we need to cover? We could also stop streaming if there's anything else you want to cover off YouTube.
Should I stop the stream?